All right, it is late at night here for me, so I gotta be a little bit quiet here. But I wanted to do hopefully a short video on Europa Universalis 5 and just sort of express how I'm starting to get the hang of the game after like 2 weeks of playing it. But what I want to do here is I want to just quickly explain the game, I guess, kind of like in a beginner's perspective, because I think that helps people a lot without you overwhelming you with too much information on how the game works. Um, so, yeah, so you got a bunch of stuff up here. This is all stuff to keep an eye on. This is your income right here. This is what obviously the 71.51 are the current amount of ducats or money you have, and then the 16.70 in the green plus is kind of your surplus, how much you're gaining, and that updates every month, once a month. And here's your time going by. You can speed that up to really fast, or you can slow it down. Just press space bar, you pause the game, all that good stuff. And these are your notifications. These are just telling you about different things. We have possible diplomatic actions we can do. We have buildings missing employees. We've got ships we're not repairing. And then you got starting advice for Holland. And I would typically not, you know what, I've learned not to cancel that out because that's really helpful. And that's really helped me really do much better this playthrough, because I kept screwing up badly every single time because I just ignored this. I was like, I got this, and I didn't get it. So decided to finally look at the tips. So you can click on this and it gives you tips for how to, like, what you should do playing as the country you're playing as, and just, you know, things you should do. And I started taking that advice and everything's working out much better this playthrough. Okay, so I just want to go through some of the things that are kind of important in this game. All right, so your population right here, this is your population. I'm gonna pause the game actually. So the population is very important. You need, the more people you have, just the generally the stronger you become, because there's just more people who can do things. Your population, when you hover over this gives you a more detailed information on your population. So up here is going to be their culture. So most of these people are low Franconian in Holland. So 80% of them are Frisian. I think that's how you pronounce that. Sorry. 19% of them are Ashkenazi. Is just a mere 34%. So that's kind of this pie chart right here. As for your religion, the vast majority is Catholic. A small 30.31% is Judaism. So, and then over here you have your kind of classes. Here's your peasants. So 85% of our population are peasants. That's 164,000 people. Laborers, 8.56. That's 16,000. And then you get your burghers, which are basically your kind of merchants and stuff. Your businessmen. These are, you know, that's kind of what those guys are. You have your soldiers, clerics, and the nobles. The nobles are the wealthy in the society and stuff. And that makes up this pie chart right here. So that's what's going on there. Total population 193,000. Used to be a lot more, but we had a plague come through, which I can show here if I go to the geopolitics button. You go to diseases. Really, the only thing that's confusing about this game, when you really break it down, is just it's got windows for windows kind of thing. You know, when you start to understand that stuff, it's not too hard. So you can see here, when we go to diseases, we had smallpox that started in the 1st of January 1338, and that killed 4.40 million people in my country, which drastically reduced. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's not my country. I didn't have that many people in my country. In our country, it killed 19,000. I'm going to say, wait a minute. I was like thinking about that for a moment. I was like, 4.40 million. That would have been my entire population. Way more. I don't have that many people in Holland. So of us, so it killed a total of 4.40 million people in worldwide. From our country, it killed 19,474 people. And these are kind of real people in the world. These are peasants. These are people who work in buildings, which, you know, affect your economy and stuff like that. So that's part of why you want a good, you want a growing population, and all that good stuff. Okay, so up here you have your government. You have your economy. You have your production. You've got society, diplomacy, military, sorry, geopolitics, and of course your advances, which is basically your technology tree. Now going to government, so this is just your government. This is going to open up your government window. This is going to tell you everything you need to know about your government. Here, this is your leader. This is who he's married to, and this is the heir. You can click on various information about your leader. You can move the capital if you want to. You can go to values, and I'm not going to mess with too much of this stuff here. I'm not going to. I'll let you figure that stuff out. I just want to go through what the backbone on how the game essentially functions here. So, in this game, you have basically what I'm looking at the screen right here. These are the estates. These are kind of like your branches of your government, and this is typical for most countries you play as. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in total. You have the crown power, you have the Adel power, you have the Gisteliskin power. I think that's how you pronounce that. This is basically the clerics. Okay, so this is the religious people. You have the burghers. It's pronounced burgerie, I guess. But these are, again, these are your business owners and stuff. They're really into building stuff that's going to help the economy and make a lot of money and things like that. So that's them. And these are your peasants. So again, they're called different things in different countries, but they're all basically the same. Your clerics, your nobles, crown, your burghers, and your peasants. So the average folks. So this percentage here, you see the percentage there, this represents their influence and their power in the country. And what you want to do in this game, you represent the crown. So what you want to do in this game is you want to have the most power, the most percentage. You want your percentage to be bigger than everybody else's. So right now we are currently more powerful than everybody else. Now the standard is you want to get that as big as you possibly can, but if that's really hard to do, what you don't want is you don't want this percentage to be anywhere lower than 25%, because then you really start getting massive penalties and you just start to crumble from there. So much of your gameplay is keeping this the way it is, like keeping this below or above 25%. So if we hover over this number, this is going to give us more information. Okay. So this is telling us why, like the amount of like why this 33% exists. So it's going to give us a list of stuff here that's affecting all of this. Okay, so I'll let you look into that however you want. By the way, you see this right here. Whenever you see this means you can, if you right click on that, you can automate this. In other words, the game takes over this part of the game for you. So automation will take care of, will basically manage the estates for you, so you don't have to deal with it. So this is a really cool feature that I don't think is really present in, at least in any of the other Paradox games that I've played. It's not really present, but it's really cool because it lets you just automate things that you don't understand anything about, so you can go kind of focus on something else, and the game will just take care of that stuff for you until you're ready to go ahead and deal with all that stuff. So when I started, I had all this on automation. I've taken it off automation now. I'm kind of learning how to deal with it myself. But anyways, so what you can do here is much of your game is a battle for, it's almost like Game of Thrones. You're in a battle for control. Okay, your other estates are going to kind of be actively trying to gain more control. So the nobles, for instance, they want to get more control, because the more control they have and the more influence they have, the more they can kind of like, force cuts on taxes against them, things like that. That's what each of them want to do. They're all kind of in your country, and they're working towards the better of the country, but also in another way they're also kind of working to make life easier for themselves. So anyways, so you have the nobles here. Typically these are going to be your biggest rivals, the nobles. Anyway, but not right now. So the biggest ones for me are the burghers. So I gotta watch out for them. I like the burghers becoming powerful because they bring profit into my country, but you don't want them to get too powerful. See, it's always that balance you gotta try to get. All right, so you see these kind of cards here on the bottom. These are privileges that each of the estates have. So the crown power has feudal nobility, this, and then you hover over the card. It's going to give you more information about what that card does, what the effects that it gives you, and there you go. I always start, whenever I start a game, I've learned to do this. When you start the game, the moment you start the game, give the crown power autocracy, because this is going to immediately give you 10% crown power, which jumps your power percentage up into the 30s. So that's a great way to start. But the way to do this is you would click this button here. Now this is gray because we can no longer do any more reforms. We've maxed out our reforms for the crown power, but we can add privileges. So what you can do, see, another thing that you have to look at here is their satisfaction for each of the estates. This is the satisfaction for the nobles, and it's kind of medium. It's kind of like, 50-50 their happiness. And you can see the red arrow means it's on a downturn. It's kind of going downwards. They're happy, but they're kind of on their way to not being very happy. So there are ways you can change this, because if you don't maintain the happiness, your estates can cause some troubles for you. Now that hasn't happened to me personally, but I've just, that's what all the guys on YouTube say will happen. They'll start rebellions and stuff and things like that. So you want to try not to make them too unhappy. So there are, again, so these things you got to manage within your country. So the nobles, this here is the number of people who are nobles. That's 639 people total, and this shows you where they live. So most of them are living in Amsterdam, and then Den Haag, which is my capital city. So the nobles are always living in the cities and stuff like that, where the wealthy are. And then here are the privileges that the nobles currently have. So these lets you deal with this stuff. What you can do as the crown is so every time you give them privileges, they get power. So you see, because they have right to inherit, this gives them 5% happiness or satisfaction, but it also gives them a whopping 50% of power. And so that gives them a lot of power. However, why is this not at 50%? Because there are other factors at play. All of this is a factor, including your own power projection, is all a factor in totaling the amount of power that they have. So their political power, so when you hover over this percentage here, this is going to give you, once again, just like I showed you with the crown power, it's going to give you everything that's affecting this number, and it all just kind of rounds up to they have 23% power. So all the give and takes, all the pluses and the minuses, they all round up to they have 23% power. So what you can do is, if an estate becomes too powerful, there are ways you can deal with that. One of the most straightforward ways you can deal with that is you can go to one of these cards here. These are the privileges, and you can right click on it, and it's called revoking this privilege. You can revoke this privilege. Now, while that works, you have to keep in mind that that's going to make that estate very unhappy, or it can make them very unhappy. Now, you can research, what's the word? You can research perks. We'll use that word. You can research perks eventually that will reduce the amount of unhappiness that an estate will get when you revoke a privilege. But that's stuff you can do. Here, this button here. So this button is where you click on this, and this gives you a list of the privileges you can give this estate. So this is a list of all these things. It gives you all the modifiers, all the effects it's going to have, and all that good stuff. We're not going to give the nobles any privileges right now. You can also, so you have issues happen where, like, you have parliamentary concessions. You want to pass a law, you want to pass some reforms, and you need the support of your estates. What you can do is, what can happen is, so this is Parliament, right? And Parliament is, this is where we can't call Parliament right now, but when we can eventually call it, we can call it and then try to pass something, a law or something like that. And you can choose what you want it to pass. And this would be the support right now. So the support would be only 16%, which means if it's below 50%, it means it's not going to pass. So you need to get the support of the estates to basically pass it. Whoops. And so what you can do is you can give the estates will basically try to bribe their support. They'll come to you and go, hey, you give us this, we'll support your parliamentary desires, your what you want to do in parliament. So that's kind of how what the estates will do, and you decide if you need that or not, and you can do that, and then you can get the thing you want passed. But of course, you got to keep in mind that is going to give these estates power and influence, and so that's stuff you got to think about. My last playthrough, I was kind of forced. I had no choice because I screwed things up really badly, and I needed to get this thing passed in order to increase infrastructure, to try to help the economy, because my economy was getting bad, but that came at the cost of a lot of money, which sank me even further in debt. And I was just like, okay, let's try that again. So you can do it that way. You can also, this button right here, you can bribe the estate, so you can give them money, and then they will give you support. So if we were to bribe them, we would lose 49 ducats. And then Adele, or the nobles, they gain 10% estate satisfaction. In other words, happiness. Whoops. And then they get that 49 ducats. Okay. So that's kind of how the estates work. So I spent a lot of time on that because that's one of the main focuses of this game. And again, there's parliament. You have your cabinet. So you have these are sort of like your under guys, you're like your direct under bosses, kind of, you might say. And you typically start with 2 slots, and you can fill those with whatever you want. You can also replace them if you want to, and then you can take these guys and you can have them basically perform various tasks. So right now I have this guy right here. He's got a very good administrative ability. His administrative ability is at 98, and so that gives him these bonuses here. His diplomatic ability is at 68, which is great, which gives him these bonuses. And his military ability is excellent, gives him all these bonuses. But we're not really in military stuff right now. So right now in this gameplay, I'm focusing on trying to get my economy just going. So that's really what I'm focusing on. I feel like if I get that going, I'll be able to expand, build a bigger military, and then expand. And become a very powerful force in Europe. So what I'm doing with this advisor right here, Hugo Brugo, I think that's how you pronounce it. So these are his stats, right? Okay, so right now what I'm having him do is I'm increasing control in South Holland. Now, control is another important thing. Everything about this game is about control. So if we go to, so let's zoom out right here real quickly. So this little piece of land right here, that's me. That is me. I'm that humble little land right there. Now when I zoom in, this is my land right here, and now it divides everything up into these little provinces. So these are all the provinces that I own right here. Now there are other provinces here, but I don't own these, so we're going to focus on what we do own. So when you hover over a province, you get the name of the province, and you get some basic information about that province, things like its geography, whatever, blah 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 blah. Now you have who owns it, Holland, which is me. And then this is the control that you have over this. So what you want to do is you want to try and kind of get to a point where you're increasing that control as much as you possibly can, because the more control you have over it, the more you reap benefits like tax. And the only way you, as the crown, you make money is through tax. Yeah, that's how you basically make money. So taxation, and you get certain revenue from your pops and the way they participate in the economy, like just basically any kind of government stuff like that. So what you want to do is, so the less control you have over a territory. So let's say this province, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, this province down here. Okay, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. Geertruidenberg. I hope that did that right. Geertruidenberg. So Geertruidenberg, it's let's say its economy, individually as an individual province, is doing excellent. It's doing great. It's just booming and booming. But if I have like maybe 5% control of that, I'm not reaping much benefits from that economy at all. Like, I'm not getting a whole lot out of that. So you want to increase your control over that. Now, you're not going to really be able to control everything, and I would say in the beginning of the game, you want to focus your control on the kind of provinces that, not to speak ill of your sort of outskirt provinces like Geertruidenberg, And after saying that a couple times, now it's not that hard. And Horn and Alkmaar doesn't even sound European, but okay. These are kind of like my outskirts. There's not a whole lot here, so there's not a lot of development, and we want to get to a point where we want to develop that, okay? But we're not quite there yet. You want to kind of start. So this is my capital, right? This is my capital city, Den Haag, and you want to kind of just grow outward from your capital city and just slowly work your way out into the rest of your territory. So right now, I'm not focusing too much on these. I'm focusing on trying to develop where I have cities and towns, because that's where I'm getting most of my revenue. And so making those better is important. So again, we have, so your capital city, you're always going to typically have 100% control of that, because that's your capital. That's where you live, and so you're going to have most of your government presence is going to be there. So naturally, you're going to have 100% control over that. We have 25,000 people who live here, and this is Brugge. The reason why this is Brugge is because we belong to this market. I'm not really going to get into the markets here because I'm still figuring the markets out, but I invite you to dive in and go for it. And then this shows you the religion of this province. It's Catholicism. And the tax base in Den Haag. So this gives you all the information about the tax base, who's getting taxed, how much they're getting taxed, and how much you as the crown are you're benefiting from that. So this is the culture right here, and then this is what it's. I think this is So this is what its resource. It's mainly gathering in terms of resource. So resource gathering operations, which is an important element of the game. You want to pay attention to that. I don't know if I'm going to go into that in this video here, because I'm not trying to get into the depths of things right now. Okay, I'm just trying to give you the basic rundown of the sort of the skeletal structure of how this game works. And I think if you get this down, it's going to help you figure everything else out. So without getting into all the minutia of pops and things like that, because there's a whole lot to this game. But if you just get these few things down, I think you're going to be all right. Okay. So you see these right here, these little windows or these circles. These are buildings that are being constructed right now. And the blue bar you see here that goes in a clockwise formation is the progress of that construction, okay? Okay, very simple, very basic, okay? You see this one has just been started in this little place, this area over here, Teal. And I am building a spinner's guild here. Now if I hover over this, see, this isn't always just that there's just one building being built in this province. It's not, just because it's right here doesn't mean like this building's being built right here. It's just telling you it's being built in this province. Okay, that's all it's telling you. So if I hover over this, you'll see that it's going to give you more information on the construction, what's being constructed here. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a spinner's guild is being built, but it's not just that. There's also a expanded gathering in Dordrecht. Of salt. So we're gathering a lot of salt in this province, and these are resources. Okay, so the resources are used to just like any other economy. You have buildings that need salt, and so you're gathering resources of salt, and those are going to eventually go to those buildings that need that. You will also be taking salt, and it'll be going into your market, which will be exported to other countries, part of the whole global trade stuff, which is going to give you some revenue and blah blah blah. By the way, again, this is your economy tab right here, and this is where you get all the information about all this stuff, which I haven't quite figured everything out here. This is your balance is pretty easy. This is your budget. This isn't really too hard. And this is where you can take out loans. So you can get a total of 20 ducats for loans, which isn't a lot right now. These loans, by the way, where do they come from? They come from your estates. You are going to be borrowing money from your estates, and then you're going to be paying them back. So I don't really want to be doing that right now. I don't need to be doing that, especially when it's just 20 ducats. Okay, so, and then here's your markets. So this is going to give you a list of all the markets you're a part of. And we are a part of the Brugge market. So this changes the map right now to show you the different markets. So the Paris market, the Nuremberg market, the Praha market, the Lübeck market, the Cologne market. I think that's how you pronounce that, Cologne. And then, of course, London, which, yeah. So this is the market we're part of, okay? And this little arrow here is showing you. So reason why we have an arrow right here is because we have a like a market square sort of thing, like a trade hub right there in our capital. And this is telling you where our goods are going to. So they're coming from here and going into the main market here, which is in this little sector right there. So that's kind of the markets. And again, you can automate these. I have these on automation right now because I haven't quite gotten to that point where I'm figuring that stuff out. Trading, the same thing. This is the trading screen. These are just goods. And then this is all about their profits and all that stuff. Again, stuff we got to figure out. So I automate that, let the game do that for me right now as I figure that stuff out. But that's the economy. Okay, so over here you can see here current constructions in Den Haag. You have the tar kiln in Den Haag, and this is showing you how many days are left for it. The +2 here is kind of like the level. So when you build something like a tar kiln in a province, so you'll have one level of that in that province. Now you can build another one, but you're not really building another one. You're just adding another level to the one that's already there. In other words, you're expanding that industry there, so you can employ more people and then you can produce more of it. That's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of upgrading the building. So that's what the +2 is. So the +2 is telling us here that there is already a tar kiln in Den Haag. We're just upgrading it. Same thing with the clay pit, which is also being built. That's going to take 343 days. The Tailor's Guild in Den Haag, 636 days. By the way, to show you the detail of this game, as you're building these, of course, these cost money, and also it's going to cost money to maintain them. But that's where you're hoping that the profit that you get from them is going to outweigh the maintain price or whatever. But you need resources like wood. Wood is how you build most of the buildings, and so you need to make sure you have a good steady inflow of wood as you're building these things, because these construction projects, they require wood. There's a regular inflow of wood to build these, and if you run out of that resource, that building you're constructing will just be on pause. It won't be, because it doesn't have the resource. And so anyways, so that's kind of the details of this game. I'm building a Tailor's Guild in Den Haag because I'm confident it's going to give me a lot of profit. I'm trying to increase that market for me. So what you can do here, so you go to the production screen, and again, buildings, you can put on automation. Food, South Holland right now is lacking some food right now, so we're gonna have to fix that. These are the buildings you can build, okay? Now, whenever it's in gray, means you can't build it, okay? You don't have anywhere you can put that right now. So we can make a Paper Makers Guild, and so if we hover over the Paper Makers Guild, say that 3 times fast, this is going to give you production methods. Possible. This right here, first of all, this is the amount of people it'll employ. It'll employ 200 people, and by the way, those 200 people are all here. So it's going to take a number from here, 200 people from your population, and put them to work. And of course, if they live in the province that you're putting it in. But anyway, so that's the employment. It's a basic industry, blah, 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 blah. And these are the production methods. So there are different kind of production methods for buildings. This one, if you use this production method, this is going to use leather, 0.2 units of leather, and then 0.2 units of lumber, and it's going to produce 0.5 units of paper. And that paper goes into your market. So you have the regular concept of supply and demand in your markets. So if we needed a lot of paper, well, then maybe we need to make some of these paper maker guilds. Now to do that, if we make that, we will be using resources of wood, of lumber. So let's say you have a building that is outputting paper, right? And you needed 5 units of lumber, okay? And let's say you're producing 10 units of lumber, okay? Just for argument's sake. Well, that means half of your lumber production is going to the building that is producing the paper. And then wherever the rest is going, who knows? And if you have other buildings that are using up the rest of that and then some, you will be at a deficit of lumber, okay? Which means your buildings that are producing like the paper are going to be slower in production because they you're not outputting as much enough wood to meet the demands for that stuff. So those are things you got to balance out. It's just like any kind of standard economic system. So what you can do is go, well, you know what? I got to find a production method which uses less wood, because I need most of my wood to be allocated over here for whatever reason. You can change production methods that use less wood. They may get you to do less paper, not all the time, but they may get you less paper, but you use less wood, and so therefore you're freeing up resource or wood to go somewhere else that it needs to go. So very standard stuff. It's just pretty basic. It's honestly, guys, this is like strategy game for adults almost. You're just doing the same thing you do in real life. It's just a matter of managing resources and things like that. So, but so up here again. So this is your stability. You want to try and raise your stability. If your stability starts to drop, you start losing legitimacy and things like that, and things start going downhill and people start to rebel. This is your legitimacy. So we're at 99%. 100's obviously the cap. The lower that goes, the less loyal your population is to you. Our prestige, I always struggle with the prestige. I'm still trying to figure out how to keep that prestige going up. But the higher your prestige, it kind of, I think what it does is it makes your country more attractive and may actually cause people to want to live in your country more. So I always struggle I'm still trying to figure out how to get that prestige up, because I can never get that number in the positive. This is your diplomacy. When you have a lot of diplomatic points, that's just more units you can use to create alliances or attack or get hostile towards other countries. So when you click on this diplomacy button right here, this gives you all these different kinds of actions. You have friendly actions, hostile actions, covert actions, economy actions, access actions, subject actions. So for like your subjects. So right now Zealand, the county of Zealand is a subject of ours. So we can basically tell them what to do. Currently, I'm not telling them a whole lot to do. I'm giving them a kind of like a deal where basically they don't have to fight in any wars for me, but they have to pay me money. So that's kind of what's helping my economy too. So hostile actions. So you can use a total of 4 hostile actions. So you can break an alliance. You can create a casus belli, which is basically allow you to declare war. So you hover over here. This is kind of cool too. So when you have these windows open up, you see these words in the blue. If you hover over that, that's going to give you another window which tells you what that word means, what that phrase means. So it literally means cause for war. That's what a casus belli is. So you can create a casus belli, but you do need to create a casus belli against another country. You need like certain means to be met. But you have friendly actions, which include curry favors. You can form defensive leagues, improve opinions, offer alliances. So if I click, I have 115 nations I can offer an alliance to. Now I can't do it to all of them, because every time you use a diplomatic action. So if I were to try and make an alliance with what's that say, Zutphen. So this gives you what's going to happen if you create this alliance. These are all kind of cool. That these guys will basically go to war with us if we end up going to war with somebody else, so they will support us. So this is a way to think about strategy. So let's say I wanted to go to war with the Guilders here. Having an alliance with like Loon or Cleves, or Zutphen would be kind of good for me, because that would mean that they would go to war with me, and Guilders would be surrounded because my allies would be coming in from all sides while I come in from over here. So you kind of see like how it can be strategic, when you make your allies and stuff. So, but if I use this though, you see what happens here. If I make an alliance with Zutphen, Zutphen, you will see one of the effects of this will be it will cost me 0.94 in diplomatic capacity. So this is going to use up 90.94 units, you might say, which is going to put me in the negative. So it's going to cost me that, but it's also going to put me in the negative to maintain it. You're basically maintaining an alliance. Every alliance that you build, you are not only spending in diplomatic capacity, but you're also you're also kind of repetitively spending it to maintain that alliance. So that's what you got to think about when it comes to diplomacy. You can't just be making a bunch of alliances left and right and a bunch of hostile actions left and right, blah blah blah, because that's going to cost you diplomatic points. So that's, again, where strategy is involved. Now, lastly, I'm just going to point out over here on the far right of your screen. I'll let you figure all this stuff out yourself. This is sort of like news updates here. Things that are happening in your country and kind of things that are kind of happening around the world. I think you can actually, so yeah, I think you can click on this button. You can click news off. You can also go to settings, and you can adjust what you want to be informed about. So I don't mess with it too much. I keep it on, but I don't mess with it too much. Up here is just kind of like basic information. These are just windows on just basic things in your country. So we have our government here. This is one of our, we just talked about it earlier, one of our cabinet members, and this is what he's doing. He's increasing control in South Holland. So it's currently at 79%, and he's increasing that. He is this one right here is he's strengthening our government. So this is what he's doing here is he's giving us more crown power. So that's what we've assigned him to do. And you can assign these guys to whatever, like different kind of assignments. So here's our constructions, estate construction. So we are constructing this Spinners Guild and the Tailors Guild at one of our estates. So your estates can actually build buildings. Now, when they build buildings, you might ask, hey, well, doesn't that mean that if they're building a building, aren't they using my money to do it? No, the estates are actually using their own money to build these buildings. So again, if you go up here to the estates, I forgot to mention this, by the way. If you hover over your estates, this is going to be not the percentage power, but the estate, the name of the estate itself. So this is going to give you information about the estate. So this is the amount of ducats that the nobles have in total. They have 86 ducats in total. Their satisfaction right here, their satisfaction equilibrium. In other words, the balance, you might say, it's at 50%. Their estate enrichment, and their power, which we just looked at, and income. So this is their income after taxes. So when we tax them, so if you want to know how much you're taxing them, you go up to your economy and you go to your balance, and this shows you your estates and how much they're being taxed. Obviously, the clergy doesn't get taxed at all because they're the religion. This is the nobles, and what we're taxing them is 1.18 ducats. So that's where that number comes from, and that modifies their income after taxes. Okay, so they're in a net positive right now. Their food income, their trade income, that stuff like that. So they use their own money to build these buildings. And this little window right here is telling you what they are intending to build next. So they want to build a paper makers guild in Dordrecht. I think that's, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what these windows are either. I haven't figured that out yet myself, but I digress. So this is the same with all of these. Okay, and the reason why something like this is important, because the more these guys build buildings, you want them to build. Okay, you do want them to build. You want them to prosper in your country, but if you give them too much, if you let them do too much, they become more and more powerful. And you see, that's where you got to keep an eye on your estates and what they're doing. So I think a typical strategy, what you want to do in this game, is you want to kind of, as the game is going, you want to reduce the power of the nobility and increase the power of the burghers, because the burghers are what's really going to make you rich. They're all about business. They're all about bringing in revenue. So, but once again, you want to be thinking about, I don't want to give them too much power. Okay, so that's how you're playing this game. So that's kind of that's the general idea of the game. And I know I said I was going to close with this, but I just want to really quickly show you the maps here. Okay, the different layer of maps. So this is the standard one. This is the political stuff, which doesn't really do much, but you have your tax base. And this is going to show you sort of in colors how much people are being taxed in the territories here, and blah 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 blah. Here is your raw materials map mode. So this is going to tell you, this raw materials, by the way, are just sort of resources that you don't need to use other resources to get. They're just kind of natural resources, and all you need to do is just gather those, which are what are called, when you go up here, goods, the RGO, resource gathering operations. So the cool thing about the resource gathering operations is they don't require buildings that need resources themselves to get the resources to use to make other resources. They're just straight up resources, and you just collect the resources. You can have your pops collect the resources that go to the buildings that need those resources, and there you go. So we have a lot of fish here in this this province, a lot of dye here, and so because we have a lot of dye here, it's profitable to create like a building that produces it, salt over here. But so it's like, just, you see it all over the place over here. Okay, that's your resource page. And so you use this to think about, I need more of this. So if I needed, let's say I needed a lot more lumber, and I don't have I have to import lumber because we're not producing any lumber here, so we import lumber from the market. But let's say I wanted to produce my own lumber. Well, I look over here and go, hey, they got a lot of lumber. And if you can eventually kind of take over the territory here and then conquer this, well, you got lumber. So that's that's one way you can get lumber. But again, you don't have to do it that way. There's multiple ways to play the game. Here is your control. So you see everything else here is kind of like in this tannish. That's because I have no control over all of this. I only have control of this little slip of land over here right now. And I think the more teal it gets, the more control you have. So the more kind of dry it gets, the less control you have. So control over here is at 62%. This is our capital. It's at 100%. 74% over here, 84, 73. So we're in a good shape here. I would say that this right here is really good shape. Now it becomes more challenging if I were to start taking over all of this and maintaining control of over all of that. That's when it would start to get more challenging. So that's the control. I'm not going to go through all these. I'll just let you deal with all these. You go through these as you want, but these are just the different kinds of map layers that give you different information about the world, and it just shows you the layers to this game. So anyways, but that's sort of the game. And I haven't even gotten into the military yet, because honestly I haven't messed with too much in the military. I haven't even gone to war at all in this game. I've been just trying to figure out how the game's mechanics work in terms of like economy and things like that. So that's really it. That's what this game is. That's really what it's about. And so if you master those things, I think you're gonna do pretty well. Like, you'll learn, you start to figure the game out much faster. So all right guys, I'm gonna call it there. I will talk to you all later. Bye bye.